final Port Committee meeting to order today. For those who are not aware, there's an introduction with new Assembly Chair Osbander, or renewed we have made the decision to transition the Port Committee into the Enterprise Activity Committee, which will be overseeing all the 5 enterprise functions of the city. But prior to that, we're going to have this last port-specific discussion on where we are with the port project and specifically the new project oversight group that Mr. Michaelis, I believe you're chairing, is that correct?
I don't chair, but I'm a full member of it.
Okay. So with that, we'll turn over to you and your gang to tell us where we are and where we're going.
I'll just start off for a minute, and then Bill and his folks will take over. But there's 2 things that we really want to cover today. One is, not to elaborate on the past and what's happened in the past, but to let you know what we're doing to go forward in the future, as far as a mechanism to provide the appropriate oversight of the port development. As you know, in the past, the port and the MOA had very little oversight of that project based on the way that the agreements were configured with the federal agency that is providing the oversight. However, a lot of changes have taken place since then, and so we do have and will have even more control over, quote, our own destiny as it pertains to the port. So we'd like to bring you up to speed on that. And then the other thing is, in looking at the port, looking at monies that may or may not be available in the near future, the port has gone through and it revised their plan, so to speak, as far as they've tailored the construction project down, but realizing that at some future date, there will be an awful lot that will need to be done at the port, but we're looking at it, and the port director and his staff, along with MARAD and others, have basically taken a look at it, and they've scaled the project down somewhat to get us by for a period of time. But again, I have to emphasize that at some point in time, we will have to continue the expansion and or the refurbishment of that port. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Governor?
Okay, well, I'm going to be, we're showing up on the screen, the top is the full expansion of the Port of Anchorage from left to right all the way through. And if we do a limited expansion, you're looking at the phasing map down below, and completion of the north end, stopping at this point right here, which is on the big map would be right here, full expansion. We would stop from left to right, 1, 2, barge dock, and 1 slip right here. And the rest of this would stay the same. And so we're going to be talking about here's what we want to build, which is the top. Here's the scaled back version that people have been asking for. Is the bottom map, and I'm going to tell you what you get with that and what you don't get. So the advantages are you get 2 barge berths, 1, 2 barge berths, and you got a safe and secure seismic-wise berth, and we would call that a win and a victory, and cut it off at that point. And then the disadvantages is that you keep the old dock, and realizing this is how we got into the project to begin with, because the old dock is old and the piling are bad, corroded. We've spent millions on putting sleeves on pile, and I've told you that before. But we would spend another $150 million putting more sleeves on pile to keep the dock safe weight-wise, but it doesn't give us any seismic protection that we would get from a new dock. So, and then we'd have to do some work on the south end. The south end is our bread and butter for the petroleum, our bread and butter, but it's a bread and butter to the state of Alaska, and to the international airport, and the Elmendorf Air Force Base, and everybody else. 550,000 people depend upon the fuel delivery that comes into this port. We would probably have to dismantle or put out of service the POL 1. It's in a bad part of the dock. And we would add another POL down here someplace out here on a piling to get us by. So that's about another 50 million. So we would spend about 150 million plus on the old dock if we do a scale back program. So that's probably enough of that. On the oversight committee, yes, we have an oversight committee and we have a technical committee. They both meet once a week on a Tuesday and on Thursdays. And the oversight committee is made up of people from MARAD, from the port, myself, our city manager, George Michaelis, and a couple of other people. And our technical committee is pretty much project management people from ICRC and MARAD and the port. We'll meet on the technical committee. It seems to be working out well. We have arranged to have bonding covering the Port of Anchorage and the municipality that we didn't have before on our contracts. Liability insurance for the project. And we haven't yet done this, but we're in the process of doing it, and we'll be doing it in the next, working on this the next 2-3 months. As the memorandum of understanding between the municipality, the port, and the Maritime Administration will be rewritten and have to be reapproved. That will deliver a project of value and reduce cost and better quality assurance and control for the Port of Anchorage and the municipality. And so 2011, this year, we will be removing tail walls in the wet barge area right here. We'll be moving these tail walls. Here's the wall going across the front, we'll say, and we'll be moving the tail walls that go up and down here, perpendicular to the wall. And we'll be removing those and doing tail wall inspection as well in the orange area here. And we'll be working through October, November, December. Hopefully we'll have a lot of information by October, but by December for sure, we'll have 100% design for the north end completion. That means we'll have design that we can wrap a ribbon around, and when we get the funding, we can let a contract to start to finish that, which will be in 2013. We'll do nothing next year, no work next year. We might do some tidy up work, some cleanup work left over from this year, but we don't know what that will be yet. And we'll start construction in 2013 and finish in 2015-16. Or we could continue on funding the project, and the total project for about $922 million. And that would be a total of 1.1 billion. And could be less if we get made whole on the funding that we spent that we didn't get proper use of. So, you know, it's too important to fail, you say, if that's the word that was used some years ago. Probably 550,000 people depend upon the port of Anchorage. We expect to get some state money, and a good deal of state money. And we're gonna put on a campaign, Mr. Flynn, to do that, just like running for public office. We'll put on a statewide campaign, particularly aimed at Anchorage, at our own legislators that don't necessarily support the port like we think they should. We need to make sure that the Assembly is supporting the port, and we're gonna hit the trail starting next week on a campaign aimed at legislators, aimed at the people, so they understand about the port and the need for it. And just briefly, I just returned from Seattle. I went down with the State Chamber of Commerce to protect myself. You don't want to let people wander around without knowledge, and so we went to Olympia and Tacoma and Seattle, met with those chambers, and we know this, but it's kind of good to get it in your head again. All those people down there depend upon the Port of Anchorage, from the freight coming across the country from the south and the east, comes into Tacoma, Seattle. There's freight forwarders, many of them, and it comes in and they organize the freight. Alaska Commercial has a warehouse in Tacoma that they buy stuff, and it comes up here and gets to Anchorage, and it's on pallets and goes out by bypass mail to their stores for the villages. Everybody's making money off the Port of Anchorage, and they just kind of assume and take it for granted that it's there and it's always going to be there and nothing's going to happen. If we had an earthquake tomorrow, we would probably lose the old docks if it was an earthquake like we had in '64. And so that's how the project started, was we have old docks, we needed to build new docks. We went out to the north and the south, because we got to keep our ships coming in on a regular basis. And that story will remain until the project really is finished, is that we need new docks. And we need more of it. And we got land, we will add 135 acres of land with the total plan. If we stop where we are at the north end completion that I've talked about, we'll have increased about 50 acres. And we have new customers coming, people that want land and provide business down there, and employment and jobs and so on and so forth. So as I said yesterday to the Seattle Chamber, if the Port of Anchorage was shut down, most of you in this room would be out of making any money. So that's the situation. I'll let you ask any questions you have.
Could I just clarify something, wait a second? So I think, if there's maybe 3 points that you want to remember out of this presentation, is that the dollar amount we're talking about now is nowhere near $1 billion. It's $200 million for the north end complete, as the governor specified. It's $160 million to shore up the current piling that we have in the old dock, and it's approximately $50 million to fix the south end. Okay, so that's it. And when I say fix, it's not really development or anything. It's just to make sure it's stable and it's good for the future. But it does not give us a seismic capability in the old portion of the dock. It does give us a seismic wharfage for roll-on, roll-off in the north end if the main dock goes down. And the other thing to remember is that it does not displace Horizon or Tow. They'll continue to operate just like they do today.
I know we have some questions. You want to go first, Debbie?
Okay. I'm trying to understand the schedule. The handout says 3 years to complete the north end. But the presentation talked about this coming year pulling up the tail walls, next year doing nothing. So the third year would be the completion?
Well, next, it's, yeah, the in-between, remember, we got a design. One of the failings in the past, by the way this has gone down, it's been a design build, so they've been designing as they've been building. That's problematic. This will give us a complete design of the north end, so that we can go out with construction documents and have a contractor come in and actually do the building of it.
No, we'd actually finish in 2015, 16. We started in 13.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's in 3 years.
okay. Then it would help me to also have a budget set out year by year for those years, so we can understand what you're expecting to get in and what you're expecting to spend over those.
We're going to ask for full funding up front before we start. And we're going to ask for $220 million.
Before we start what?
Before we start construction on the north end of Fed.
We've got the money for design, and we've got the money for the inspection of all the tail walls for the summer. We've got that money. What he's talking about is the actual construction, once the design is complete.
Okay, so this is 222 additional dollars, not including the money that's already been expended.
That's correct. Yeah, that's in addition, what's needed. 220, 160, 50.
Well, this
Yeah,
is a little more
it's
than
slightly
that.
different. On the detail sheet is accurate.
So
The
what's-
breakdown is 222 million to complete the limited expansion of the north end, the barge berths, and the north extension 1 berth. And I just want to caveat, these are preliminary concept cost estimates.
Yeah, it's
We
a-
do not have final designs. They have not been cost estimated for construction next year. So they are our best informed guess at this point to give order of magnitude. That being said, okay, that's a limited north extension. If we were to move forward with a full expansion in the north end, we'd need another 100 million. That's how you get the 322 for the full expansion alternative for the north end.
Okay, so
Okay.
basically, just to paraphrase,
Yeah, so now that alternatives diverge, if we're talking about a limited expansion and the investment in the existing facility, we expect an upfront investment of around 175 million. That's broken out in the elements that we've got on the detail sheet. 104 million for pile sleeves, about
Yeah.
9 million for
I see it.
okay. So that's where we get that number, and that's what we think is a minimum investment requirement to keep the dock standing. We don't know, can't predict with any accuracy what the seismic performance benefit will be. I mean, to do that, you'd really need to do full-scale testing on these sleeves.
All right,
So now, going back to the full expansion alternative, if you move back through the plan, these numbers haven't changed from what we presented before. It's another 300 million to do the 2 phases of the south end at a minimum, and to close the center, another 300 million. So that's 922 from where we are today.
I'm just trying to understand the funding for the limited expansion.
Right.
And so basically, we don't have that 397 now, but as soon as we get it, then you'll do the years 12 through 16.
We have
that
developed
right?
this detail around a fully funded schedule and budget. So if there's a disconnect in the funding, it affects the schedule. This assumes full funding up front for those elements ahead of construction. So award a contract for that value to do full construction of that phase.
I'm a little bit confused. You're removing the tail walls. Is that removing them to repair them, or we don't? Okay, so that's just
That's
repair.
reacting to the installation damage situation.
Oh, okay, good. And I'd like a little clarity. We now have bonding on the project. Is that bonding stuff from here forward, or is the bonding covering?
It's important to recognize that the contractual relationships have not changed. The municipality does not have a direct contractual relationship with the contractors on the site. What we've been able to change is that the municipality is a additional named obligee on the construction performance bonds. That's a new dynamic, and that's from this point forward.
And in addition to that, the MOU actually will set up a new structure as far as the municipality's involvement and oversight. And so there'll be a new structure that will be developed, different than where we are today, and that's in the process of being developed.
And you don't anticipate any issues or problems in getting that memorandum of
No.
understanding put together?
No, because Merit agrees with us conceptually right now.
In a few minutes, I'm going to ask our friends from Northern Horizon to offer a few comments if they wish, but I have a few more questions I think might inform that discussion. First off, I'm looking at this and I'm not understanding why, given the deterioration of the existing dock facility, you wouldn't do North End phases 1 through 3 for $322 million and have two seismically stable brand new berths, as opposed to spending $397 million, which is 70 some odd million more, just to maintain what you have now, which we recognize is deficient. That's why we're doing this project in the first place. Why didn't we explore that option? Or did you somehow dispose of it for reasons that you haven't disclosed yet?
Well, I think the easy answer to that question is this full expansion requires a commitment and support of our customers. And that starts at that first berth, Terminal 3. For us to move forward from the limited alternative to anything beyond, eventually will require the existing customers to move off the existing facility. So we're providing an alternative that, in our opinion, stops short. It does not achieve the objectives that we set out to achieve 10 years ago.
I agree, and you're spending more money than it would take to give them brand new berths where you could accommodate the larger cranes for larger vessels, and you would be in a seismically stable position where you're not at risk of losing the dock. Why wasn't North Extension 1, 2, 3, which you list here, $322 million, explored as an option as opposed for your limited expansion?
Well, it is an option.
It is. I mean, what we've tried to do here is provide the range. I mean, the limited expansion, in our opinion, is the absolute minimum that we would recommend. And we don't really recommend it. It's really, we feel we're in a position, we have to at least do that.
I don't know.
You guys aren't communicating.
Yeah, let me say it one more
understanding.
time, and I'll try to be more clear. Okay, in your full expansion column, you list $322 million to complete barred berths, North End Extension 1, 2, and 3. With those done, you have a new berth for Toad, a new berth for Horizon. What's left of the dock is probably functional on the south end. Why wouldn't that be your best limited expansion, given that you would achieve the seismic stability you want and not have to worry about these corroded pilings?
Yeah, again, we have offered an option based on the feedback that we've received as we've
Okay, I'll talk to Toad
seek
Horizon.
funding. So,
I'll get the comments.
well, if I might, we really don't distinguish north to south on the existing facility as what's better and what's worse. I mean, Terminal 3 actually is one of our best existing facilities because it's one of our newest. The south end is much more deteriorated. It's equally important to the municipality with the fuel distribution network that's there. So we see that, again, there's importance to addressing both ends of the facility. To do that, you have to relocate the existing customers. We can't modify the existing facility significantly and keep them in business. So in order to do North Extension 3, the customer in Terminal 3 has to be relocated. They have to move.
I know that.
So the limited expansion didn't want to make any assumptions about customer support for the program. It was the bare minimum of where we are today and achieving some objective, though it's not, what we set out to do originally.
Okay, if we do this limited expansion, how do we address the silting issues at Terminal 3?
Okay, the limited expansion has one element that we hope will make a positive impact. The cells, and it's not easy to read on the board, but the cells in the, at the very southern end of the existing footprint are affected by the installation damage. They have to be removed ultimately. We are recommending that that happens sooner rather than later. That pulls that corner back about 300 feet. Our hope is that that will make some improvement. We can't quantify that improvement without the help of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers developing a fine-scale sedimentation model for this project. That's going to take about a year from now to have a model correlated to the observed problem and that we could have confidence in. But we certainly know we won't be making the problem any worse. So at a minimum, we're recommending that removal sooner rather than later as part of this limited expansion project.
And how many times, that's George, I'm sure, but how many times have we had to push toad off so far this spring?
It's 4 times this spring so far, and looking at possibly more on the May 15th and May 17th, depending on when the dredge gets here and when we get some soundings.
You have 2 more negative tides coming.
The dredging, the dredger arrives tomorrow, and take a day or 2 for them to beef up, to move up to start dredging, the dredging will start. So I think that probably covers the period of time that you're concerned about, George. But anyway, you know, we're promised each year that the Corps of Engineers is going to have the dredger here by the end of April, and each year it fails, and through price and negotiations or whatever it is, it's never happened. But if the dredger was here toward the end of March, then a lot of the problems would be solved. But anyway, they're not, and I guess we can't depend on it.
Without really any proprietary information, you mentioned there's new businesses interested in locating at the port. Can you expand on that at all?
Well, we have Delta Western coming in. They're going to release when the Coast Guard's moving out of the port at the end of June, and so they're going to take over that spot. They're going to put their lubricants down there that they sell and do their barge business out of the port, and they'll be leasing some ground in the South Transit area, only what ground we have left to use. And then we have another client that wants to come in eventually and on the north end, and I don't want to mention their name. And we have some other people looking at possibilities too as well. So there's whatever land we get a hold of, we'll be able to lease it. But we just need to protect ourselves for modular construction work if there's a gas line there and things like that. So we're watching pretty closely, but we have people that want to create businesses down there.
Dick, you have a question or two?
I have just a quick question to the governor. I saw you've got on here remove damaged sheeting. Do you guys have the money to remove that sheeting, and what's the cost?
Well, we're under construction this year, and yes, we have the money that's been funded to do that. This year's work. I don't remember the exact cost of the contract now. John, you?
There's roughly $2 million for the demolition of the upper tail walls and the wet barge berth. There's roughly $6 million associated with the the exposing and inspection and recovery of that area in the tail walls in the north extension, one berth that's affected. So I think we're talking about a $9 million construction budget this summer.
And we have the money
that money's in hand and those commitments have been made. The demolition of this corner is part of the $222 million estimate for the limited expansion alternative.
Now, are we going after the contractor for damages, or, I'm trying to figure out how it got this bad.
Well, first of all, again, the municipality does not have a direct contractual relationship with those parties. So we are relying on MARAD, who does, to take the lead in that regard. We know that there are claims that have been tendered to MARAD. We were just copied on those for the first time this week. We have not had a chance to evaluate that information and backup. So we will be doing that shortly, and are looking to MARAD for leadership in that regard.
We have made it very clear to MARAD that we have an expectation of recovery of the money that we spent that basically had to be redone, the project that had to be redone. So we made that very clear to them. They understand that, and they've acknowledged that we do have a right to that money. The problem you have right now is that, as was stated, we have no contractual arrangement with MARAD, nor do we have any contractual arrangement with any of the entities that basically did any of the construction down there. That was how it was set up years ago, and that's what we're fixing right now. So we will have, as soon as this final memorandum is completed, we will have contractual arrangements, and we will be able to basically protect ourselves from the fact that we will be able to help direct what's being done down there. We
The
didn't
city
have
never
that
had
before.
never had a contractual relationship with MARAD or the.
No, what the city had was a memorandum of agreement that allowed for three things for the Muni. One was the Muni would basically indicate the schedule of the ships. The Muni, and the other thing is, no, there was only two things, and the Muni would provide the money. So the Muni would provide the money to MARAD, and the Muni would also basically provide the schedule. Other than that, we basically were not in the document flow process, nor were we in any position to be able to direct the activities down there associated with the construction. And so one of the problems that arose was, since we had no contractual arrangement in that regard, as these deficiencies became noticed by the contractors on site and subs, they certainly, there's indication that throughout that whole chain, there was information that was basically going forward showing that there were some deficiencies there, but the Port of Anchorage was never informed of those deficiencies until, what was it, June of '09?
A year later
Yeah.
is when we really started to understand the scope of the
So
problem.
that's when we started finding out what the problems were. Even though there was an awful lot of questions that the port made of MARAD and the contractors at that time, there was no information forthcoming as to the severity or if there was in fact a problem. So as a result of that, that's why this memorandum is being drafted and significantly changed, in that we are a partner, we can direct along with MARAD, and the other problem that was set up on the original concept is you had a company that was fulfilling two roles, and that was ICRC. They were fulfilling the role as the general contractor, and they were also fulfilling the role as the project manager. And the project manager basically role, they were reporting to MARAD. Typically, your project manager reports to the owner because they represent the owner on the ground to make sure things are being done right. So under the new organization that's being formed through the memorandum, that will be taken care of, as well as our right to be able to help direct activities of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Pat, sorry.
Presuming you're willing, George, would you mind coming forward and giving us a little bit of feedback here? I have a couple questions, please. And I'm sorry, I don't think we've met.
Tony Dad.
Tony, would you mind coming forward too? Sure. Just come on to the table over here.
Could I clarify Mr. Trainey's question while you're
Please.
coming up? Just to make sure I understood. I understood you to say you do have funding in hand for removing those basically they're the vertical lines between the two yellow there on the wet bar, on the barge berth, but you don't necessarily yet have the money in hand for that. Is that correct?
That is correct. This demolition is an element of the north end completion.
So, Mr. Davenport, Mr. Lowry, thank you. I guess my first question for you is, have you seen this before? What we're seeing
No,
today?
this is the first time I've seen the scope of the limited design. I've heard the discussion, the first time I've had a chance to see what that plan was.
Same for you, Mr. Davenport?
Yes, sir.
And you heard my question about why wouldn't we, for example, build through North Extension 3 so we could relocate both of you to a seismically stable facility. I recognize that would increase your hostling costs, but in your opinion, and I won't hold you to this forever, but in your first impression, that might be a better option than a limited expansion, or do you think the limited expansion leaves you where you are might be a better way to go?
You know, in my case, I think it's difficult to answer that question. You know, where we are today is we're in the worst place, and whether where we are today with a fixed siltation, you know, if that's
If you
fixed,
fix that, right?
that's fine with us. Or, you know, if we're in a new berth, we do have the additional dray, but and we don't know what the siltation issues would be in that place. That's an unknown, which we've never got, to my knowledge, is an answer from the Army Corps what that simulation would look like. So I don't know the answer to that. I guess my only position would be that, you know, in our present siltation problem, it's a real issue for us in particular, Toad in particular, because the problems at our berth, and if you've seen our ships sitting out
Twice so far I've seen it,
off
yeah.
the small boat harbor, you know, those ships aren't designed to sit in moving water and stuff. They're 860 feet long. They're designed to be either tied up to the dock or in motion where you have some control. So we're actually putting ourselves at risk out there, you know, just loitering. And we've had, if you look this past Tuesday, we were pointing north, pointing south, and those guys are, you know, they're sweating bullets out there, and it's not fun. So if we in the limited expansion, if we move that wall, if enough to remove that siltation problem, that would be okay. You know, that would be you know, quite satisfactory actually. But I know I'm not answering your question, but
Well, I mean,
I guess my
Silt will direct your ultimate answer.
yeah, that's our biggest problem, but, you know, if the project went to fruition under complete, and we were in a final location off of our present terminal, operationally, that's fine. But moving to what you're considering is a more completed north extension move out there, we do have the additional dray where we're separated a greater distance from our core terminal, which is our reefer plugs and our maintenance facility, so that increase our operational costs. So not an ideal solution for us either.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Davenport, do you have any comments?
Horizon supports the full expansion of the project, obviously.
Understood.
Okay. Your question about limited expansion, the full expansion, maybe a mid-range expansion showing the completion of Terminal 3 and Terminal 2.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I expected to get information today about what it would cost to finish North Extensions 1, 2, and 3, so.
Right.
Todd, you want to?
Okay.
Todd, just, it's okay.
It's here.
It's here. It's the 322 million on the
Yes,
full
322.
expansion. Okay.
And basically, if you want.
It's this right here.
Through the yellow. And so you can sort of see up there, you'd have Toad north of you like they are now, but on this new dock face, you guys would be south, and there'd be crane rails sufficient for you guys to bring in your larger cranes. Given the two options, and this is a hypothetical, but given the two options of moving you guys and Toad a little further north and giving you access to larger cranes versus keeping you where you are and doing this limited expansion scenario you see at the bottom, is your instant. And again, I won't hold you to this. Are you inclined one way or the other?
We'd be inclined to move to the larger crane rails, bring in bigger cranes.
Do you guys have any other comments you want to offer to us? Having sat through this and been with us for the last year?
Yeah, I think I've
Okay.
you know, verbalized our main concern, and that's you know, and even if we do something, we're talking about, it ain't gonna be fixed this year,
Right.
so we're gonna have to go through another season, And we have, in order to get off the dock early, I mean, we're having to, start early, work through lunch. We're increasing our costs at a significant amount of money to accommodate the problems that we're in right now.
The scope of the project is huge. The impact of dollars to this project is huge. But I think the loss of port or the pilot due to any major earthquake, that's going to be larger. So we'd like to see it equated.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
I guess my question, Patrick, is in looking at the option that you're discussing there, is operationally, how do you do that? Are you able to accommodate all of your needs while you're doing that? Is you're still able to get into the old dock?
Or our previous phasing plan, that, I'm sure I can dig it out here, had North Extension 1 plus a little bit more to make the maneuverability for tow safe so they could turn their vessel within the.
Yeah, that's part of this. That's still here, but this is 700 foot. I'm sorry it's difficult to read. These were huge files and we manhandled them. But that adjustment is in this dimension here, 400 to 700.
So, yeah, so we have an 1,100 foot berth up there, and tow would migrate first. And then you continue with the north extension, which would be moving in a southerly direction, but you keep Horizon where they were until you had enough room to move them up there too. That was sort of the phasing plan we had worked through before. And I think all the siltation studies we did and so on and so forth indicated that the berths would be safe to operate.
Well, again, we really do, we with MARAD are engaging the Corps of Engineers to do this fine scales model as soon as possible. The Corps, says that's 12 months at a minimum. So that's a very important element of the entire expansion project.
This is the Vicksburg.
Yes,
stuff.
so we hope to have a much better tool available to prove out some of these concepts as we move forward.
Could we, maybe at a later date, get some more detailed information about the bonding and the liability insurance that you talked about? What kind of financial arrangement, cost and what it covers?
Basically what it does, it covers the cost of the construction. So whatever that construction cost is, the bond covers it, the performance bond.
For the full?
Well, no,
or the
it's
limited?
by phase. So it's by phase. So in other words, the construction bond would cover the next phase of construction. The liability insurance would cover any injury or any other associated type of damages associated with either a natural incident or a man-made incident or somebody's failure. So we're covered both ways. And just remember that when this project began and up until just a couple of weeks ago, the municipality had no coverage whatsoever provided by anybody. And there's no cost to us. That cost is being borne by the contractors.
Oh, that was.
We're not paying.
That was what I assumed.
No, we
it came from the courts.
negotiated that. That's being paid by them.
Oh, okay.
I just would clarify, what we are seeking is analogous, similar to what the standard municipal requirements are on all municipal construction. We're using, when it comes to performance bonding on construction, it's the value of the construction contract. That is the guarantee provided by the contractor. For liability coverage, those are limits established by MOA risk management and incorporated in the mass standard specs. So there's nothing unusual there.
Yeah, those are 10 million.
Okay. Can I ask another one?
Please, I'm out of questions at this point, so.
Okay, the removal of those vertical walls, that's because, that's part of the continual pull-up to check for damage?
Yes,
issue?
we know that the wet barge berth is compromised to the point that it has to come out and be reconstructed. With what we have available in funding and permitted to do, we can partially do that. I'm not saying it correctly. We can demolish part of it this summer, not all of it, and that's the upper portion of the tail walls into the backlands. The investigation in the center portion is to inform the design moving forward. The face sheets proved out on the dive inspections that we briefed you on last time. We don't have enough information about the tail walls to call that area good. We want to get that information this summer, and that will inform the design for whichever north end alternative we end up with. That's how we will get more information this summer.
When you talked to us about this design, it was integral that those vertical portions were integral in holding the thing together.
Yes, it's
So
all one.
if they're removed,
Oh, well, again, for the purpose of the construction, the wet barge berth is stable with those upper tail walls removed. The completed facility and the operational loads on it, you need those extended tail walls. So we're gonna do what we can do to get ahead of the curve and not compromise the stability of the site.
so it doesn't compromise them to have it up as long as it's not operational.
Correct.
Any more questions?
Probably, but not right now.
Yeah, I know well, this discussion isn't over, but, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up and we'll get into our next work session here in a few minutes. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming, appreciate the time. Jennifer Johnson will take over as chair of the Enterprise Activity Committee, so she'll be in touch.
With your continued
Broadcast.
support, Mr. Flynn.
Oh, yeah, I'm staying on the
Ask
team.
for each one of you that.
Very good, thank
Assembly
you.
here.
All right, so that, somebody stop me, please.